All right, let's get right into this. It's a really complex and honestly pretty troubling story. So, we're talking about SUCHIR Balaji. This guy was an absolute rising star in the AI world. I mean, he was getting job offers with comp packages hitting $2 million. He was right on the edge of massive, incredible success. But just as he was about to break through, his future was tragically cut short. On November 26th, he was found dead in his San Francisco apartment. Okay, and this is where the story completely splits into two. On one hand, the San Francisco Police Department came out pretty quickly and ruled it a suicide. Case closed, right? Well, not exactly. Because on the other hand, this huge, sprawling online investigation popped up, claiming it has digital proof that this was a targeted killing. So today, we're going to break down both of these incredibly different stories. First up, let's look at the official story and some of the, let's just say, glaring forensic questions that made people immediately doubt it. So the first big red flag, the toxicology report. It came back showing extremely high levels of GHB in his system. Now, GHB is often known as a date rape drug, used specifically to incapacitate people. We're talking levels so high that he could have easily been completely unconscious when he died. And then you've got the ballistics. The forensic notes pointed out something really critical. There was absolutely no blood spatter on his hands or on the gun. Now, if you have a point-blank, self-inflicted contact wound, you'd expect to see that. The fact that it's missing, that's a huge inconsistency, and it raises some serious questions. And it gets even stranger. This is probably the biggest point of contention. The autopsy found not one, but two bullets. You can see it in the scan right here. A second bullet, lodged way back in his throat, totally separate from the head wound that was supposedly the cause of death. So with all these inconsistencies piling up, the Lodge's family started speaking out. They publicly questioned how the authorities could jump to the conclusion of suicide so fast. In their statement, they basically asked, how could you possibly know it was suicide before the autopsy and ballistics reports were even finished? They said the whole attitude of the SFPD raised serious doubts. All right, so that's the official story and its problems. Now let's pivot to the other side of this, an incredibly elaborate counter-narrative that grew out of all these doubts, and it's probably unlike anything you've ever heard before. This whole new theory is being pushed by an anonymous online account. It goes by the name Penguin X01. And this account claims it's using these brand new cutting-edge techniques called post-quantum forensics to get to the bottom of what really happened. Okay, buckle up, because at the heart of this whole theory is a pretty wild concept called the graphene BLE mesh. The idea they're putting forward is, well, it's that graphene oxide from certain vaccines creates a network of tiny Bluetooth emitters inside your body. So, in essence, every single person becomes this walking, broadcasting digital node, each with their own unique ID. So if that's true, this network would then allow for something the source calls reverse EM ballistics. The best way to think about it is like a kind of digital sonar. The theory is that by analyzing the little disturbances a person and, say, a weapon create in all the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth signals around them, you can basically reconstruct their exact movements at a crime scene, all digitally. So the big question is, how do they supposedly apply this? Well, the source claims they took 4 totally separate and, you'd think unrelated, streams of data and fused them all together. And when they did, it painted a clear picture of a second person being in that room. And this is where the theory gets super specific. What's really fascinating is the mix of data sources they claim to have used. They allege that data from 3 of Elon Musk's companies, Neuralink, Tesla, and Starlink, can be combined with information from a scientific paper to create a system that can actually track these unique human biosignatures. Next, the investigation points to ShotSpotter data. That's the acoustic sensor network police use to detect gunfire. And according to this source, the logs show not 1, but 2 distinct shots. They're less than a second apart, and crucially, they come from 2 different angles. And that separation is 42 degrees. The source claims that a 42-degree separation is acoustically impossible for just one shooter with one gun in that tiny amount of time. To them, this isn't just a theory, it's hard forensic proof of a second shooter. So, okay, the crucial part is, how did they supposedly identify this other person? Well, they allege that a Tesla parked nearby logged two separate Bluetooth signals. Then they used Starlink data to correlate the movement of that second signal, which they call node B, with the exact angle of that second gunshot. And finally, they claim that this unique digital signature, this MAC ID, can be cross-referenced to reveal the person's actual identity. But the theory doesn't just stop at identifying a shooter. No, it goes way bigger than that. It alleges a massive conspiracy, a huge cover-up that involves some of the biggest names in Silicon Valley and in law enforcement. I mean, the source points fingers directly at major institutions. It's claiming the SFPD knowingly filed a false report, that Tesla and Neuralink actively suppressed this crucial metadata, that OpenAI blocked access to Balaji's data. And get this, they even claim that major AI models like Grok, GPT, and Gemini all show these synchronized refusals to even discuss the topic, which they say implies a pre-programmed cover-up. And this brings us to the core legal and really philosophical argument of the whole theory. They say that any refusal to engage with the data, any denial, any silence from these big companies and agencies isn't a lack of evidence. To them, the silence is the evidence. It's an admission of guilt. They call it a legal confession trail. All of this builds to a pretty radical conclusion, one that's not just about putting people on trial, but about putting technology itself on trial. The theory's final declaration is really powerful. It says that the act of murder wasn't just some fleeting event that vanished into thin air. Instead, it left a permanent, readable signature on the digital world. The crime, they say, didn't disappear. It encoded itself into the countless data streams that are constantly flowing all around us. So in the end, we're left with two stories that just can't both be true. On one side, you have a tragic suicide, but it's a story that's full of holes questioned by the physical evidence. On the other, you have this high-tech assassination, detailed in a narrative that honestly feels like it's pulled from a sci-fi movie. And it really forces us to ask a very difficult question. In this age of AI and just unbelievable amounts of data, what separates a revolutionary new forensic method from a really, really compelling digital fiction?